So back with part two in this computer. Initially bought it on the Facebook Marketplace for $100. Has an i3 10th gen. It's got a Radeon R7 370. Weak sauce, power supply, and yeah, that's about it. 16 gigs of memory. It didn't work, and we found out that the issue was that instead of plugging the pin to the power button, they plugged it to the reset button. We fixed that up. We stress tested, and this thing works really good. Now, like I mentioned in the other video, this computer case is not going to sell itself. So we're going to have to add some pizzazz or something interesting, pretty much RGB, just to kind of get it to go. So this is what I got. Now, the good thing is, compared to like those Dell OEMs, this case is like tin metal, real cheap and easy, so it's a lot easier to cut. So I was going to cut it around the outline over here, but then the issue I run into is that I'm not going to be able to hide my imperfection cuts with this grommet that I use. So I use this grommet all the time. It hides the imperfection, makes it look pretty decent on it, and then we'll be able to put either a plexiglass on it or some type of metal material. We got this. We're gonna cut this and see how it looks. Now I made my measurements. I did probably an inch from here to here. That way, I believe that piece is a 1/4 inch. That way, when that rubber piece goes right through here, I'll be able to have an overlap, and then we can mount or stick the metal grate over it. Couple of options that I do use. One I like to use is silicone, as that works really great. With metal grate and this, I have used epoxy in the past. That works really good. Another option is you can drill holes and kind of come up with some type of screw mounting system. I might entertain that. Let's see how this comes out first with my cuts, and then we'll take it from there. Now I did add a clamp there and there to hold it in place, so hopefully she'll help me with my cuts. All right, we're done. So this is the look that it's going for. I just got it loosely mocked up, but pretty much kind of like that, which is not bad. I think once we spray paint this black, I'll probably go with a flat black on it, just to kind of give it a, I don't know, accent two-tone. Kind of just putting this together in my head. Another thing I am thinking about doing is maybe red. Probably not. That probably will pop too much. But I got to see what kind of color scheme I'm going with the fans. But for the most part, that works. So now I got to cut this. And yeah, let's get that going. That was a lot harder than it needed to be. Mostly because, well, I'm just being lazy. I should have just drove to the store and picked up some more of those cutting discs. But I got what I wanted to achieve. So I had bite over here to kind of adhere it. I already checked that on the case. I am cleared over here, so yeah, this is actually working pretty good. So now the question is, do I go this direction or this direction? And I'm thinking this direction is gonna look better maybe. All right, panel's painted. It's a little glossier than I wanted, but it'll work. So now, got to mount it to this joker right here. Make sure these molding pieces are set in place. We're going to go with the whole up and down action. That should be good. And I got spots up here, here, and here, and probably along here that I'll use. You got a couple of options. One way I've done it in the past is I've actually drilled a hole and used a large washer, do 4 screws or bolts or however you want to do it, here, and then that kind of holds it in place. That's actually the best and ideal. Another way I do it, Gorilla Maximum Strength Construction Adhesive. This stuff works really good. And what I kind of like about it is if later on somebody decides they want to just go with a clear plexi panel glass, or I've even seen people come back and come with a different mesh, it's a lot easier to take apart. So let's go with this. So one thing I'll do is I'll kind of mark where I have the excess. So that'll hold it down. I'll let it dry for an hour, and that thing won't go nowhere. Alright, so while that's drying, now the next thing I got to do is get this thing cleaned up and put together. So we're going to have to do some upgrades to it. Number one, I want to put a nicer cooler, something a little better. Even though it's an i3 and it doesn't require a super cooler, something would be better. Fix the memory, graphics card, and just wire this up and give it a really good cleaning. So let me show you what the plans are. This thermaltake cooler, they're pretty cheap. It has RGB. We could do the whole addressable RGB and put a nice color scheme. Don't know which one I'm going with yet, so it's definitely a good option. Newer fans, because we got the whole black and gray thing going, so I got these height fans. They look pretty decent, so I think that will match pretty nice, especially with the whole schematic of the motherboard. Our graphics card, we got a EVGA 1080, also kind of black and gray, so I think we could flow this pretty good. So let's switch to the Montage, clean this thing up, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, folks, so we're done. And I gotta say, it does look a lot better than I thought. I'm glad I went with the whole up and down. Looks a lot nicer, and I gotta say, that adhesive I used, solid. So cleaned it up pretty good, popped in the 1080. If you notice, the cooler is a lot different, and I went with that for two reasons. Number one, well, bigger is better. I guess size does matter. And number two, that thermal take one just did not fit, and I've actually run into that a few times. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that cooler. But anyways, have the CryoRig H7. Actually, a viewer sent me this like 2 years ago, and I forgot I had it, so it's been sitting around. So now it has a good home on this i3 temp gem. Is more than enough for this, so we should not have any thermal throttling issues. Now the front, I was able to find a panel for it. It's slightly different. If you can see, can't really notice it too much, but it is slightly different, but it matches for the most part. It fits, it doesn't pop out. That DVD was junk, and I'm not gonna spend like $10 on another DVD drive when this actually looks a lot better. Now the cable management is tough in this case. I mean, it's kind of just compressed in the back, and I'm pretty sure that this case is like, you know, a fat girl in the girder. It's just gonna explode any minute, but it works. I tried to clean it up the best I can. I guess I could probably do a couple more wire ties to clean that, but really don't notice it. Now, like I've said before, RGB does sell. If I was to sell this case with this computer the way it is, I'd probably have it sitting for a couple of weeks, if not a month. But once you take a picture, show it with the RGB, you'll get a lot of offers, you'll get a lot of hits. I've actually had it where I've had computers for like steal of a deal, $200 awesome computer, and it will not sell because it has no RGB and it has a boring case. And then I've had computers with a ton of RGB and pretty much a starter computer, and that thing sells within a day, even a couple of hours. It's just weird. I guess, you know, people judge a computer by its cover. So I'm done for now. I'm probably going to list this thing up for sale. I'm into this roughly, honestly, $130, and that's mostly for the solid state drive. The graphics card, I have a couple of these that I got in on trade, and the customers just let me have it because, well, they upgraded to like 30 series cards, and so I got a couple of 1080s. I really can't say that I'm into it, anything like that. Folks, if you're going to build computers or get into it, take care of your customers and they would take care of you. I've had a bunch of customers that have done upgrades lately, and they've really hooked me up with some parts to kind of help stock me up, and it helps me for profits for when I got to flip computers. Take care of your customers, they'll take care of you. Hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below thoughts, concerns, criticisms, questions. Anytime you run into a case like this, the best advice, get a Dremel, do some cutting action, a little RGB, and yeah, it'll go a long ways. Plus, I think it looks kind of cool. So if you like this video, definitely hit the like button, subscribe if you're not, and as always, we'll see what we come up with next.